So my name is Alan Hunt, and I'm here to talk about Python in the ActivityPub. And if you don't know what the ActivityPub is, just kind of the new generation of social media platforms that are coming out now. So I'll start with the usual, kind of a little about me. So I'm a father, I'm a hardware design engineer. I like to play with Flask and React and do some web apps, but I kind of do that as fun. My day-to-day job is a design engineer. So a lot of this kind of stuff, I just like to kind of play with APIs and play with like gaming stuff and pull data from APIs. And I've started recently playing with the Mastodon API, and I thought that was fun. If you're not sure what Mastodon is, it's kind of a replacement to Twitter. You can think about it. It's an open source replacement to Twitter. And those links down there are my Mastodon link and my PixelFed link, which is a replacement to Instagram. And my GitHub link. I'm going to be giving some code examples here, and all the code examples are available on my GitHub. But everything here is just going to be kind of a very high-level example. There's not going to be any real in-depth code, for example. OK, so what we're going to cover, so what's on the agenda for today, kind of why you should move to the Fediverse. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. So there's a lot of bad stuff going on with the current social media platforms. But first of all, what is the ActivityPub and what is the Fediverse? So we're just going to have kind of a quick high-level overview of those. I'm not going to get into too much depth about that. About 80% of the talk is going to be on Mastodon and kind of interacting with Mastodon using kind of different ways of interacting with it. So first of all, without using any libraries, except maybe the requests library. And then I found a really cool library as well called Mastodon.py. And I hadn't originally been planning on using that, but once I started getting up and going with it, I found it very good. And we look at then making a basic bot for Mastodon. And kind of for completeness sake, I said I'd look at some of the Lemmy stuff. So Lemmy is a replacement to Reddit, and PixelFed is a replacement to Instagram. And then if we have time, questions. And what I'm not going to cover is how to deploy the app, because I think deploying an app like this or deploying anything is a talk in itself. And if anyone has any good kind of information on how to do this, I'd really appreciate seeing a talk like this as well, because I love kind of making toy examples like these kind of bots. But when it comes to actually deploying them, it's always a real kind of pain point. OK, so why should you move to the Fediverse? And I think I tried to summarize this easily. The existing social media platforms they're problematic. So if you look at Meta there with 2.2 billion worth of fines, Meta and TikTok, Meta is trying to release a competitor now to Mastodon and to Twitter called Threads. They haven't released it in Europe yet, so I'm not sure if anyone's actually heard of Threads. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it. You probably haven't heard of it because they're not allowed to release it in Europe because they're scraping a lot of your kind of behavioral information and advertising information. So the EU have kind of jumped in and kind of stood in the way of that, which is good for us because it's a massive privacy concern. And then Twitter scandals. Jesus, what's been going on Twitter the last year? I mean, it just gets worse and worse as it goes on. So when I said problematic in the last slide, what I really meant was these people are purposefully amplifying hate speech and harassing behavior in order to generate more engagement on their platforms. And kind of us as users, we shouldn't be going along with that. We should be kind of leaving them where it is. And I see in the last account there where Elon Musk reinstated a bunch of hate accounts. He actually went in this week and he did it again with a couple of really nasty people. So look, the bird is dead. So we're leaving Twitter. Yeah. And unfortunately, the death of the free API, this has been coming for a while now. Twitter has killed off their free API, and then they kind of brought it back, and then is it or isn't it free, or do they still have a free API? We don't know. If you haven't seen the Reddit controversy that was going on this year with the big kind of Reddit blackout, this was the post that started it all. One of the third-party apps, when Reddit brought out their new pricing scheme, the developer realized it was going to cost him $20 million per year to keep his app running. And yeah, so and Reddit have also promised to develop a new developer portal for people like us who are kind of hobby developers. They made that promise exactly a year ago today. Well, not today, this month. And I checked in on it again, and it still hasn't been kind of come in place. So I suppose the main thing is whether these platforms do or don't have a paywalled API. For us as developers, it's no longer really attractive to develop on these platforms anymore. So, there's a lot of better platforms that we can develop on and that do have kind of better APIs than them. So this is kind of social media 2.0. So it's out with the old and in with the new. And a lot of these, you may or may not have heard of some of these because they're quite new. So Twitter, I hate that bloody icon they've got for the X. It's terrible, it's shockingly bad. But anyway, we're moving away from Twitter and we're moving on to Mastodon. So Mastodon is a new free open source alternative to Twitter. I'm going to talk about that in a second now. We're moving away from Instagram to PixelFed. And PixelFed is a bit newer, but it's kind of up and coming now. It's a bit more of a kind of watch this space. And with Reddit as well, there's a new open source alternative to Reddit called Lemmy. So we're going to have a look at that. So before we kind of dive into any code, what is the ActivityPub and what is the Fediverse? And this is the mascot of Mastodon over here. So on Twitter, when you send a post when you post a status update, you tweet. And on Mastodon, because it's a Mastodon, you toot a status update. So if you hear me saying the word toot, that's because it's a Mastodon, and Mastodon's toot. So like a quick word on what is the ActivityPub and what is the Fediverse. I'm not going to get into too much technical detail here. So the ActivityPub is a World Wide Web Consortium communication standard. So it's essentially a communication protocol that allows different social media servers to talk to each other, if you can think of it that way. And the important point is, the last point is really important as well. So it provides a federated server-to-server API for delivering notifications. And that's important to us as kind of users because essentially what that means is, so on my PixelFed account, I can like posts on my Mastodon account. So that's equivalent to saying, on Twitter, can you like an Instagram post? Well, you can't do that. But now with this new platform, you can. So here's my, I'm on the Mastodon app, and I'm searching my PixelFed account. So that's like being on the Twitter account, and you can natively look at Instagram. And you can see I've liked my own status there, just for a bit of an ego boost. But you can see then as well, on the other side, so this is PixelFed here, and in PixelFed then I get a notification that someone in Mastodon has liked my post. So those kind of notifications are going across different social media boundaries. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff we can do with that. Like if you've no friends like me, you can like your own posts. And again, what is the Fediverse? I'm not going to pronounce this word. It's when you take Federation and Universe and you squish them together, that's the Fediverse. And it's decentralized networks. So it's all about decentralized networks. If you've never heard of or if you've heard of a decentralized network and you don't know what it is, I have a nice kind of image for that, the next one. But there's a lot of kind of benefits of the Fediverse. One of the key ones is privacy was kind of built in from the architecture of it. So let's say if you're on Mastodon, if you're on one Mastodon instance, and you don't like what the server owners are doing, it's designed in such a way that you can take your account and you can put it onto a different Mastodon instance and then just say, look, I don't like to be a part of that server anymore, I'm going to join some other server. There's no algorithm, so the dreaded algorithm that's hit up Twitter and Instagram and is kind of, we've just talked about it there, Twitter are using it to amplify hate speech. Instagram, if you have any of your friends, if you follow your friends, you don't see your friends anymore. In this case, there is no algorithm, you just see all the posts in a chronological order. And there are kind of trending posts as well, so you can see some other stuff like that. And there's no ads. So the majority of these guys are, of these platforms are ad-free. They do rely on volunteers and they do rely on donations. I joined Mastodon.py recently, and that has an open collective, which is really good then because you can see all their accounts. So you can see their server cost X amount per month, and you can see their income cost, or they received however much this month. So that's kind of quite good. And this is just, again, another kind of highlight-level diagram of kind of what is the Fediverse and what is the universe. So you can think of each one of these circles as its own kind of social media type. And on the very top there, we can see microblogging. So Mastodon and Twitter, they would be considered microblogging because you're only kind of sending 160 characters or 200 and whatever characters. And then down on the bottom left, you can see PixelFed. So that's an image sharing platform. And then the ActivityPub then is the kind of blue line that connects them. So it's the communication protocol that allows us to communicate between all of them. And it was established in 2018, and I think a lot of it was implemented in 2019. So it's still very new, it's still up and coming. But Yeah, and that's about as deep as we're going to get into kind of what is the ActivityPub and what is the Fediverse. And for the Fediverse then, we'll talk about, let's say for example, Mastodon. Mastodon is all about kind of community and building your own community. So I did say it was a decentralized network, and what is a decentralized network? Well, there is no one Mastodon kind of instance, you know. Mastodon.social is the main Mastodon company, and they're set up, and they have about, I think they've nearly 300,000 users. I joined Mastodon.ie, so Mastodon.ie is an Irish one, and that has about 20,000 users. And then there's other ones like free open source software, so Fostodon, and that has about nearly 50,000 users. So what you can do then is by kind of joining up with all of these servers, you can kind of create your own community from this kind of larger community. So there's kind of as much content there or as little content as you like. And just because you join one server doesn't mean you have to like kind of pin your flags to that one community. You can follow people from different servers, or you can add different servers to your timeline. So let's say if I was on Mastodon.ie, I can also add Mastodon.social to my timeline if I think it's a bit quiet. So you know, you can build it up that way. And that's kind of what they mean by your home timeline. So if you're on Mastodon.ie, your home timeline, you'd only ever see kind of Toots from 20,000 people. But if your federated timeline would be any server that's in your federation. So there could be hundreds of thousands of people there. Okay, so the first thing, so when you're creating a bot account, the first thing you need to do is kind of create a bot account. So there's a couple of do's and don'ts, and I learned these the hard way. So first of all, use a bot-friendly server. So again, Mastodon is all about small communities. If you look at bots in space there, that's a small Mastodon server. I think there's about 2,500 users on that server, and that's designed specifically for our use case that, you know, you can create a bot account and you can host it on this and you can play around with it. Hachyderm.io is another one, but that's not a specific bot account. And I think there's a few more people on that, but they're good in a way because they have guidelines, kind of community guidelines for if you create a bot account, this is how you should use your bot account, and you know, this will make sure you're not going to get banned or limited in any way. And then don't use your personal account because you don't want your personal account banned or limited in any way, and don't spam the timelines. So I learned this the hard way because I didn't use my personal account. I did message the mods of a server that I was on, but I had a program that was kind of in a loop that was kind of I was talking about this to another guy earlier, but I made a bot that was every week that when my bins go out, I keep forgetting which color bin has to go out. So what I did was I created a bindicator app, and it sends out a notification saying, this week it's your green bin, this week it's your black bin, this week green's your... But I didn't want to wait every week to see if my app was working, so I set it to send out a notification every minute. And I left it on for a few minutes, but what happened there was it was filling up people's timelines, and everyone who saw those Toots were obviously reporting me to the admin saying, you know, get this guy off the... And they did. So they didn't ban me outright, but what they did do was they limited my account. But to be honest with you, for a bot account, this is probably the ideal state, because essentially what that means now is people would have to add my account in order to see my tweets in their timeline. It just means I won't bother anyone else. So I'm kind of like sitting in a little corner by myself, and people will only hear me if they come over and talk to me. Okay, so in the Mastodon web interface, you can create your own bot account, so your bot application. So you go down, you click on development, you click on new application up the top, and you get your credentials there. So the credentials you get then would be your client key and your client secret and your access token. So the client key and client secret would be more for if you're creating an OAuth 2.0 application. So if you were creating an application and you wanted other people to authorize their accounts on it, but I'm not going to do that, so I don't really need the client key or client secret. I only need the access token, and I use the access token then in place of my username and password for these accounts. And just to say that, so I'm creating an application here for my user, but I don't necessarily need to do this via the web interface. So when I use the Mastodon.py script, or library I should say, there's actually a facility in that to create an application, so we look at that too. Okay, so our first example is using Mastodon with requests, and I have to say the docs for the Mastodon API are actually very good, so I've added in the link there. There's a lot of really great information in there, and I'll switch over and back between the docs now. So read Toots from the timeline. So that's kind of, read tweets from your timeline. Whenever anyone kind of sends a toot out, we can do it. So one of the things we can do is there's API endpoints for just reading your home timeline. And in this case, I'm using an API endpoint to get the timeline and timelines/tag. So that's a hashtag. And the hashtag is the category there. Okay, so I know there's about kind of 30 lines of code here, but none of this code is actually needed. If you just kind of create that URL and paste it into Chrome, you'll get a JSON response back from that. So this is just kind of, for example, really. So in this case, I'm searching for the hashtag cats, and I want to limit the amount of replies I get back. So the last 5 toots using the hashtag cats, I'll read that back. And then because I'm getting 5 responses back, I'll loop through them and see what we get. So first of all, we just build the API URL there. And this is what I get. So I'm only kind of printing out the strings here. So first of all is the ID. And it's important that you get the ID of the post because that's how you essentially interact with this post. So if you wanted to like that post or boost it, or if you had a bot that retweets all the hashtag cats or whatever, that's how you do it. You'd use that the ID number. The content is a bit funny here because it's actually HTML formatted content. So you can see it's in an opening p tag there, and there's a page break, and it's using spans as well for the hashtags. So it can be a bit trickier, kind of parsing through the content, but it's not too bad either. You also get the URL and some other stuff for it. And this is the cat, what I did. So this is an old TV show, DJ Cat, but I was just doing this as a test. So this is my tweeting from like the hashtag cats, and you can see at the very bottom of it, it says hashtag cats. So that's the tweet. And in the URL, if you paste the URL into the browser, it takes you directly to the tweet. And you can see at the bottom there is bot is false, and that's because this is my personal account, it's not my bot account. So if it was my bot account, you can set a flag there that will tell people it's a bot account. And that way you can filter out then if you don't want to interact with bot accounts. So I did say the docs were very, very good, and we had kind of a quick look at what the API response looks like. But yeah, the docs are actually really well done out for the response types as well. So they have all the response typing information there. I know there's a talk tomorrow as well that I'm really interested in going to. It's about kind of typing in Python as well. So if you're interested in some of that, you have all the typing information here. And we can see when we use the view timeline/tag API endpoint, we can see it returns an array of status. And if you look at the JSON up there, it's an array with 5 kind of different status objects in it. And then for each one of the keys in the status object, we can click on one of the keys and kind of see what it is. So whether it's a Boolean or an int or a string. And if it's a string, let's say for visibility, it's either visible or not visible. So it'll give you those kind of, it'll give you all the typing information for that. So that's pretty good because I've worked with a lot of APIs, and it's very rare that you actually get kind of good response data like that in the API. So we've read the kind of timeline. We haven't needed to do anything to authorize our account. And we've already kind of authorized our account where we've already created an application. So all we need to do is just take the credentials from that again. And I suppose from here on in, if you want to follow along with the code, there's the coding examples are all on my GitHub repo there, so Python Mastodon demo. And here's what I'm doing. So I'm just taking all the credentials and putting them into an environment file. And this is the code then to send a toot. So I think there's about 30 lines of text there, but realistically, it could all be condensed into about 2 lines. I've just kind of spread it out here so it's a bit more readable. Okay, so you read the environment variables. So I've put the access token in the environment variables, and then we format the message. So the message is essentially JSON data, so the key being status, and the value of that then is whatever string you want to send as your message. And then we can take our access token then, and we can put it into the header. So it uses the authorization key, and it then says bearer, whatever your access token is. And then we send the request there as a post. And that's what it's like. So we get our nice little JSON response that we were looking at in the last page, and we have all the types for that as well. And the response then as well is kind of quite important. There's a lot of data in there. So for example, the post ID is very important. As I said, if you send out a tweet or a toot, and let's say if you wanted to reply to your own toot, if you see that post ID, your next ID, you can use that as a reference to reply to this. So let's say if you had a big wall of text and you wanted to kind of thread all the all of the status posts. There's like 5 different status posts. You could use that. And you can't really see it, but in the bottom here, there's like in reply to account ID and in reply to ID. So you can, let's say if a user invoked one of your bots in one of their tweets, then you can find the kind of main tweet in the conversation that they were talking about. I should say tweet in the conversation that they were talking about. And you can see at the very bottom there, visibility is unlisted, and it's unlisted because I got banned. I got limited. So no one else can see this one except for us. And there's the Toots. Okay, so we've sent it out, and there's kind of 2 important pieces of information. So the account name is Allynbot 5000, and on the bottom then it says there's a little kind of lock key, and there's the number of boosts and likes. It says Allynbot 5000 as well. So the one on the bottom, that's the actual application name that we're using. So from this point on, I'm actually finished with that application, and I'm kind of finished with kind of using requests. I'm now going to swap over and use Mastodon.py. So that application is kind of gone, and we'll recreate a new application for PyCon IE. And this is how we do it. So this code here is taken directly from the docs, from the Mastodon.py docs. And this is essentially how to authorize your account. So it creates an application for you. You log into that application, and then it saves off your credentials into a file. So I think everything except for the last 2 lines, you never use that anymore. That's just for creating your account. So once you kind of create an app there, and we call the app then, I can't see, it's a PyCon.ie app. So it's no longer called Allynbot 5000. And you can see once you create the app, you can actually go into your Mastodon web interface, and you can see that the application has been authorized by you. So if you're not happy with that anymore, you could just delete it or do whatever you want with it. We log into the new app, and we send the toot, and we can send the toot there, and we can see at the bottom of the toot then, it's no longer like Allynbot 5000, it's now using the PyCon IE app. Okay, so we're using a whole different application for this. And so that's Mastodon.py. From now on, we're going to look at it from the bottom 2 kind of lines of text. Okay, so how do we log into Mastodon? We use the credentials file we have at the bottom here, and then we just call a function like mastodon.toot. So that's kind of our starting point for the next bit. Okay, so we looked at a couple of kind of examples of how you could send a kind of post, or how you could reply to a post, or how you could stream, or how you could pull data from the timeline. But let's look at creating a basic bot. And this is a kind of a very common bot you'd see. You might see it on Twitter or Reddit. It's called a remind me bot. So if you're having a conversation with someone online, and they say, oh, hey, let's meet up for coffee, and they're saying, well, I'm away for the next 2 days. So you reply to the message and say, okay, well, remind me in 3 days. And then you'll get a reminder back in 3 days' time saying, hey, remember this conversation? You said you were going to do something. So here's the code for our remind me bot. There's not too much to it. A lot of that, to be honest, a lot of this code could be abstracted away. It looks kind of way more busier than it actually is. So the first time here is we log in again to Mastodon using our credentials file. And next thing, we have a nice function here called mastodon.notifications. So that's actually pulling all of our notifications. So anytime someone kind of mentions our username, we get a notification. Anytime anyone kind of likes one of our toots, we get a notification or boost it. So that pulls back a list of all of the notifications. Now, in this case, we're not concerned with all of the notifications. We're only concerned with the notifications where someone has invoked the bot using the exclamation mark remind me text. And then for that, then we just say, if they've mentioned, 4 hours and 24 minutes, then we take that time and we create a time schedule with that. So we just create a date time object, set some time in the future, and a message to say, hey, remember, here's your reminder. And then at the bottom, then we can send a scheduled toot. Now, the scheduled kind of post thing isn't a Mastodon.py thing. That's actually part of the native Mastodon.api. So whether you're using Mastodon.py or not, you can send scheduled toots. And it's very simple. It's quite a good feature. And this is it working. So there you go. So when you call the bot, hey, Allynbot 5000, remind me in 15 minutes. Hi there, Allyn, here's your reminder. And you can see it was 16 minutes ago, but it took me a bit of time to get the screenshot. And then obviously that will work on your mobile phone. So if you have the Mastodon app on your mobile phone, you'll get the notifications like that because they've pinged the user as well there. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways we've looked at how to interact with the Mastodon API. So we looked at, it's a spoiler alert there on the screen, I think, so you can kind of read some of that. But we looked at, first of all, pulling the timeline or else pulling the hashtags. We've also looked at posting data to it, so like updating statuses. But we can also stream the data from it. And what is streaming? Well, essentially we just kind of keep an open WebSocket and we only get a notification of, when something we want to see happens, we get a notification of that. And what are the benefits of that then? The main benefit is you get real-time notifications. So like if someone sends you a notification straight away, you only get that message back. You can stream your home timeline, you can stream hashtags, and you can stream DMs. So it's pretty good. The way we kind of do this is we create a stream, what's it called? A listener object, and that listener object has two callback functions. So on update and on notification. So if you're looking at the home timeline and someone makes a post, it fires the on update notification or on update function, and then you immediately get a notification. So let's look at how we do that. So again, it's a bit of another bit of an eye chart, but there's only kind of really 3 lines of code that are kind of going on here. So the very top bit, again, as usual, we log into Mastodon, and we have this class, the stream listener. So we kind of extend off the stream listener from Mastodon.py, but essentially all we really need here are 2 functions called onUpdate and onNotification, and that just allows us to kind of change the behavior, whether this was just a status post that someone has posted, or if it was a notification that we've directly received. And you can see at the bottom then as well, there's a couple of examples. You can stream the user, or you can stream, so let's say if you're streaming that user, that's notifications that are relevant to that authorized user, so their timeline or their notifications. Or you can stream all the public timeline, and you can change that as well. Do you want to look at just that user's local timeline, or do you want to look at the entire federated timeline? Or you can stream hashtags, and again, do you want it to be just local hashtags or the entire federated hashtags? And in this case, I'm streaming the PyCon IE. So essentially what this program will do is it'll just kind of sit there and wait, and then when a hashtag or when a post meeting that criteria is made, then it'll pop up with the data you want. And kind of there's the post. So is anyone else going to PyCon? And I've used the hashtag PyCon IE. So you can see down at the bottom, I'm streaming for tag PyCon IE. And that's pretty much it. So, this is kind of a quick high-level overview of Mastodon. There's a lot of really kind of cool stuff we can do with that. There's a lot of cool bots that we could easily make. And just for completeness sake, I said I'd have a look at Lemmy as well. So if you're not familiar with Lemmy, it's newish enough, and it's kind of an open source alternative to Reddit. So we've all seen kind of what was going on with Reddit this year. The quick summary, I think there was 8,500 subreddits went black and went dark, and the moderators kind of shut off the subreddits as a form of protest to the new API changes that Reddit were making. This went on for several months, and even after that, a lot of the subreddits went not safe for work, which was a kind of a fun little way that they were able to protest against Reddit by setting the subreddits to not safe for work. Reddit was no longer able to sell ads on those subreddits, so they kind of really financially hit them in the pocket there with that. And then that kind of proceeded on until Reddit themselves, actually, the admins went in and reopened up everything. So it's kind of fallen behind in times now, but I think at this stage, we need to find an alternative to Reddit as well. So this, again, is a very kind of quick high-level overview. It's more of a kind of just to show you that there are libraries out there for Lemmy as well. So there's a function here to log into Lemmy, to Lemmy. You can see it there. And again, you're using your username and password in this instance. You can set up OAuth if you want. And then we can view community info. So we have this, the function called getCommunity, and the community name is Lemmy. So in Reddit terms, that would be get subreddit, and the subreddit's name is Lemmy. And we can print off the information from that community. So you can see the community name is Lemmy. This is a funny one. The URL for the community is called the actor ID, the key ID. But I'm not sure why, but there you go. And then the community ID. So the community ID is kind of handy as well, because just like before with the status post ID, we could use this community ID, and then we can interact with that community somehow. So let's see if we take that community ID, and then down here, then we can create a post on that community. So then we can just, we have a function here called create post. We passed in the community ID. We give it the title and the body of the post, and then we just print out the responses. So there's the creator ID. The community ID is the same as above, and then the test post, please ignore it. Testing on Lemmy. So there you can see it. You can see it's worked there. So again, a very, very quick overview, but we have all of these kind of capabilities available to us with Lemmy. There's a lot of kind of really cool stuff you could do with this. For example, you could, what I like about Reddit as well is I like some of the bots. If you've ever been on like the Lord of the Rings subreddit, and they have like the Gandalf bot, and I like to see them, what they do is some person will invoke one of the bots, and then they'll get that bot to invoke another bot, and then they create a big line of like all of the bots talking to each other. So there's a couple of cool things you could do with that. Like you could create your own like Gandalf bot or whatever one you want. If you had a community yourself, you could create an automod feature. So whenever someone kind of creates a post in that community, you can reply to that post and say, oh, by the way, make sure you've read our community guidelines before you proceed in this community. Or, you know, because we have all the community information there, we could total up all the posts a community receives per day, and we could plot out trending communities or something. But and just to be aware as well that Lemmy doesn't have a streaming API at the moment, so you're stuck in this kind of capability that if you wanted to get kind of reoccurring data, you'd have to run this on a cron or something else. On PixelFed. Yeah, just a very high-level overview of PixelFed. I had really high hopes for PixelFed, but unfortunately, it doesn't really seem to be there. So PixelFed does have an API, and it does have the docs for the API. And the docs, actually, if you click in here, they'll link you directly back to the Mastodon docs. So like all the API endpoints are the same between PixelFed and Mastodon. So I did have a bit of high hopes, but it just seems like it's not quite there just yet. So while they've said they've implemented it, I did hit up a lot of the endpoints, and I got back, let's say, status 500. There was an internal error. I have an example here where I was getting the timeline. So I've just taken the very first read timeline example here, and I've swapped it over for PixelFed. And you can see here's the response I got. So the response I got was, I got a status of 200 to say they were happy with it, and then they returned back index.html, so that wasn't working for me. But I think there's kind of, once this is up and going, I think this is going to be good. So it sounds to me like the API is ready. It just hasn't been kind of rolled out to all of the servers that are there. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. So that's kind of a very quick overview of kind of where Python is in the ActivityPub at the moment. So I think I've got about 1 minute for questions, so maybe not.
I should personally say that I really enjoyed your session, so a whole round of applause for the session. Nothing excites me more than sitting and enjoying the session and then seeing your beautiful codes well written in code. So thank you for that.